you did this wrong back in 2012. You will accept guilt, you will accept regret, you'll accept doubt, you'll accept everything before you accept the pain in the present. I am a businessman and a monk idea is a complete facade. It's just not how that works. Indians are prone to the deepest, most vile form of envy when it comes to money. And they have rationalized their lack of it with inflated spiritual ideas. If you truly hate people with money, how are you gonna have it? I can feel tingling with trigger hormone because I said it, but it's true. Walk into the room like you own the planet. I must assume talking to me is a privilege. The entirety of my being is paying attention to you. What the hell? You see what I mean?
I love it.
The question that spiritualists should get asked almost as a litmus test of their spirituality is...
What I like is that what I see, a lot of people are just locked in their thoughts, and it doesn't allow them to take risks, to have the courage to do more things. And what you did, you are able to switch off that, and you are not afraid. You're not afraid in the situation.
Right.
No, but my question is, where's the limit? Because there's a, where's the limit in the sense, because it got you into trouble sometimes, right?
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
Most points in life you can walk back from. There's a few places you can never walk back from.
Yeah.
Schopenhauer writes about the two existential default states of man, and it's either toil or boredom. And he says toil torments a man until the man delivers himself to boredom.
Okay.
That you are tormented by suffering and doing until you're completely bored, and then boredom, tortures you. And so most people are not as bored as I am. They have stuff to do in life, right? It's my fucking problem that I'm that bored, right? So you're not going to run into troubles. Most places when you're in trouble, just say sorry and get the hell out. Because you will make mistakes. Sometimes you make a mistake reading the room. Sometimes you say stupid things. There's a very famous debate from New York. If you know of Sam Harris, Daniel Kahneman, these guys were debating, I think, something in psychology back in 2018. And at this point, I was learning all of this stuff. And so I walk into this place, I'd been at university all day, I hadn't had anything to eat. I hadn't even thought of the fact that I hadn't had anything to eat. Halfway through, I get hungry, I go out. There's only a bar, so I get some wine. I was like, wine is fruits. Fruits is food. We can maybe do this, right? So I get a couple of glasses of wine, I drink them. I don't realize when I'm a little tipsy. And then they break for questions. Before I know it, my hand is up. And before I know it, the spotlight's on me. And they ask me to ask a question, right? And I'm like, okay, what do I even say? I haven't even thought of a question. I just wanted to say, like, these guys are heroes, intellectual heroes, right? So I asked a question, which I still think, I stand by it, I think is pretty smart. They didn't think it was smart at all. And they went on to rip me a new one right there in front of like thousands of bloody people. Like maybe 2,000 people. And now, when people kind of know me, and I've kind of mentioned it on the internet, people will very often go there and underneath you'll see them comment about it or come and tell me, I heard you embarrass yourself, right? But it doesn't matter. So these places are all you can walk back from. You can embarrass yourself, say sorry, I didn't read the room right, I made a mistake, I was too quick, no problem. Some places you don't, and those are the outer limits you learn. This is not going to get you killed. Driving is much more likely to get you killed. You see what I mean? Like maybe you sit on the toilet and press too hard and you have some kind of a internal organ failure. That's more likely to get you killed. So it's a pretty safe art to practice. And the art is not so much being charming as much as it is overcoming your own self. That's the deeper lesson there. Things never just happen on one plane of existence. They're tied all the way down from the bottom to the top. The psychological plane can only be altered if on the deeper level, let's say your spiritual principles have been altered. And the spiritual principle here is you are your own prison and you're in love with it. Drop it.
Say that again?
You are your own prison and you're in love with it.
Oh. Let's deconstruct a bit what you say, because you studied psychology, right?
Yeah, well, I pretended. I sat in the classes and I was like, okay, I window shop. Yeah.
From a human point of view, where do you think that comes from?
It's telling yourself that the confines of your prison are beautiful. Look, so here's the thing, right? I don't have money or I don't have respect. Let's start with that. I don't have power. Take any of those things. I have a problem to solve immediately, which is I have to psychologically justify my own existence to me. Why does Rodrigo have money and I don't? Is he better than me? If he is better than me, then I'm worse than him. What am I doing to be worse than him? I can go on and paint the loops of cognitive load that occur from a single factoid in your material reality. You have to understand, things have, the thoughts have a sequence and they emerge from material factoids that occur around you. And so this material factoid, the fact that I don't have money, has to be rationalized. I know of many older gentlemen who've now retired who, when they get drunk, will tell me, Prakhar, I never worked for money. I work for the love of people. And my point is, I guess you have it. You don't need to say that 5 times in a night. Probably you work for money but never got it. And that's not being true to yourself.
Okay.
Right? That's not being true to yourself. Because if it was true, you didn't need to insist upon it so many times. I don't need to remember that about you. Anyway. So what really happens is that a lack of something is met with a long series of rationalizing thoughts.
Okay, yeah.
Most famously, you will see this with artists who never succeed, or who are not succeeding, or who are struggling. Artists put self-imposed confines on themselves all the time. I'm the pure artist. These guys are all commercial, while they secretly envy the fact that these guys are making money, or that these guys are getting the recognition. If you are that pure, then live in your pureness. It's a beautiful, blissful place to be. But if you want to make money, learn to play the game a little bit. And if you don't want to play the game and you want to continue in your blissful state of following your artistic instinct and hoping the world would recognize it, then be content with that. But you are trying to play this game where you clearly want something you don't, but you have a series of rationalizing thoughts, and those rationalizing thoughts are preventing you from having it. Because you want to convince yourself that my confine, which is I'm a purist, is a better place to be than if I'm a commercial artist. But what if, and this is the spiritual maxim, your imagination dissolved into what is real? What if only what is true and not what should be? This is the whole principle, right? Spirituality, don't desire, right? Like, let go of all the attractions and disattractions you have to the world. And so on.
Exactly, yeah. So it's about like our expectations. When your expectations doesn't match the reality, then that's where unhappiness come. But if we are going into spirituality, and but how to balance that?
I can tell you how Aristotle thought of ethics. I can tell you how Nietzsche thought of man's condition. Right? Do you act from them? It's a very different situation. It's very, very different. And this, what you act from, is something you have to experience. And so let's put it like this. You're in a carnival. This world is a carnival. And this carnival has many attractions. These attractions are not necessarily made for you to have fun. They're made for you to have very realistic experiences of pleasure and pain. Okay? And at all points in time, we are following our own unique maps through them until we are done with all the attractions. Okay? And I will tell you this as information, it will not make sense. Because I know this as information, it has made sense in certain parts of my life, but it does not right now. The final attraction is silence. The final answer is isolation. The loudest noise that you need to hear that will consume your being, that people are looking for when they drive fast cars, or when they sleep with attractive people, or when they make a lot of money, comes from the cosmic melody, comes from silence. Okay? But before you get there, there is all these entertainments you have to follow. And those entertainments are your friendships, is your chase for status and money, is your chase for certain desires you've cultivated inside yourself. The trouble is, if you're not honest with yourself, you will never chase them. You've wasted a life, now you have to start again next life. Because where are you going to go? You're not going to die. Only the least imaginative answer to what happens after death is you die. It's the least imaginative answer. It's much more likely that you're thrown back into this simulation to dance again, get done with your map. So in some sense, we're all individually following a map. And how you balance that is a deeply personal act. What I can do is, by talking about this, hopefully light the smallest flame under which maybe for a second you're like, maybe I need to look at the world like this, and start understanding that I have to live a very personal journey, right? The personal journey deeply requires that level of honesty.
And what is the essence of life, in your opinion?
It's a folly to frame it as purposeful. I think, like I said, I feel like the most, okay, so let me disclaim it by saying, don't listen to me. I'm like a 28-year-old idiot who can speak words that make sense to some people and don't to others, and I'm figuring it out as I go. And I've been lucky enough to be bored so long, I've had the opportunity to truly experiment with enough to understand more and more, right? And to some degree I might make sense, to some degree I might sound stupid. It's not that life was ever a choice. We weren't born out of volition. We were thrusted upon this earth. And it is probably why the Christian maxim is that of guilt. Because the very fact that you were born out of, first of all, sex, and then it's never your choice, and now you must live in this corrupt physics, right? Life was never a choice. I was thrust into life. And therefore, to ask now what is the purpose of it is to ask what is the intention of the Creator.
Mm-hmm.
And we can kid ourselves into thinking we can figure out the intention of the Creator. It's a complete lie. You're never figuring out the intention of somebody you can't even figure out if they are or not. So there is no, it's a good story to tell yourself. It can help you pass your life. But it's not effectively true. I don't think there is a purpose to life. I think you are thrust into this dance and you perform all the way until you die. And this performance has certain necessities you need to play out, right? Those necessities have a level of choice. You can live on the streets in Mumbai, or you can live in the penthouse in the building next to this one. And those two are very different choices you make, and they completely alter the way you live your life. For a pro athlete, smoking is a non-option. For a Bollywood actor, smoking is a lifestyle choice. For the little boy who always worked in that smoke shop, it was food in a certain way. And for that street urchin who's begging for money, he was forced to do it by the mafias that control him. It's all your characters have certain responsibilities. If I take on the responsibility for my parents, life is about making sure they have a good life.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I produce kids, now life's about making sure they have a good life. As a man who is physically more capable of handling violence, my job is to make sure if there's an ugly knock at the door at 2 a.m. to walk out. You see where I'm trying to go with this? A lot of what life is about is what the context is presenting and you are accepting. Right? And we can live our lives pretending like this is the most important thing, which is what we do. We buy into our own stories. These stories become self-important and then we live these stories out. But effectively what you're doing, and this is my guess, this is the part where I'm unsure because I'm not 65, I'm 28. You are trying to get done with these things. You're trying to get done with these attractions.
And where does that end, that boredom?
Silence is my guess. My guess is eventually the answer is silence.
Tell me more.
So, I mean, think of it like this, like what happens when everything is done? Really, nothing does. And then you're finally allowed to sit. Because if I take you and I say, okay, Rodrigo, believe me, I'm a spiritual guru. I look the part. I have like long hair. I look like I'm an ascetic who spent enough years in the Himalayas, like looking at goats and cattle and just like, thinking about God and meditating. And now I come to you and I'm like, listen, the answer is in silence. Come sit. come sit in silence. Just do nothing. Just be here. Just be here now. Like Ramdas would say, just be here now.
Yeah.
Like Osho would say, let the person who watches emerge, right? Like, if I say that to you, what happens? You're like, what the fuck are you saying? I have things to do. The fuck do you mean sit in silence? Sorry if I'm crass about it. I have things to do. I have journeys to undertake. I have adventures to take on. And so this is what I mean. If you now go the reverse, if you do your journeys, if you take your adventures, where do you emerge? You emerge in silence because there's nothing left to do. And then maybe you go inwards. Then maybe the inward journey begins. And you begin to realize what mind and matter is all about. That's when I think the true approach to spirituality actually begins. That's why the modern monk, this I am a businessman and a monk idea is a complete facade. I've never found somebody who's truly managed to execute that theoretical concept well. I feel like the theory itself is ridden with paradoxes. Because if you're about the money, you're not a monk. It's just not how that works. You're either one or the other. And pick your lane and have fun with it. Yeah.
I think, like I was exactly in that thought, in that paradox. How can I have a spiritual life while also have money?
Yep.
And Sri Ravi Shankar said something that really changed my mind about that.
Okay.
What he said something very interesting. He said keep your money in your pocket and not in your mind.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah,
I can kind of get that.
You get my point.
Kind of.
So it's exactly what you are saying.
Right.
It's about distancing from the greed of money,
or even the identity of money.
Exactly.
Like take it less seriously.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so the modern monk is not somebody who has this aesthetically spiritual life of meditation and such. While they're also hustling in their business, wearing suits. It's not this odd combination between a business suit and an ascetic's robes.
Yeah.
A modern monk is somebody who understands that money making and career is also a game.
That's it.
And you're able to play that as a game.
Yeah.
You're able to understand the non-sincerity of it. That's it. That's all there is to it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And where do you think people get lost in that game?
Well, I almost feel like we like to get lost. I don't feel like that's a bug. I think it's a feature. Right now is a Ronaldo vilifying narrative taking shape on social. Cristiano Ronaldo is being massively villainized right now. He's being shown as unleader-like, arrogant, selfish. It's really like you can see the undertones of that happening. In fact, there was a hashtag Homelando that was trending a little while ago that was comparing Homelander from The Boys, the TV show, I don't know if you've seen, who's probably the best villain ever written in television. Really, he's like that good. Because he's basically Superman, but bad. And there's no counter Superman. So he's just like the most powerful bad person. And Ronaldo being compared, right? And there were all these pictures of them looking similar and like all this like, right? And firstly, I don't think anyone truly knows Ronaldo. Anybody who knows Ronaldo is not commenting on internet about Ronaldo. But people want that story to be real of him being a villain, of his obsession with the game being bad, of his trying hard to be the best in the world and maybe not succeeding, maybe just losing out to another completely monstrous, brilliant Messi. Maybe by a few inches. Because if you think about it, Ronaldo's story is pretty tragic. If he was born one generation before or after, there would be no contest. But he was born with this other guy who's completely gifted in a wild way. And so people want to believe Ronaldo is bad more than they care about the fact if Ronaldo is bad. People like their beliefs too hard. They don't really care for what is real. Their narratives, their excuses, their stories is what keeps them going, right?
Yeah.
And so, in some way, what we enjoy about performance as an art is forgetting the truth of it. It's the suspension of belief, or the suspension of disbelief rather. You want to be swept off your feet. That's what you truly enjoy. You want to be taken into that narrative, pulled into something that is bigger, grander, more interesting and richer in detail than your life. Because your life is effectively mundane no matter who the hell you are. Right?
But why is that?
Because the truth is boring. The truth is deeply unsettling. Who wants to know there is no love? Who wants to know that their concept of their perfect other half is a fantasy they've believed in too hard? Right? You think the people who cheat on their spouses start from day one by thinking one day we will cheat on them? No. They start with love, very much like the rest of us. One day, that fantasy breaks. You realize that love is not what Hollywood or Bollywood or your Jane Austens have sold you on. Love is very different. Who wants to believe that? Nobody wants to believe that. The harshness of reality is too harsh. The mundanity of reality is too mundane. We live in narratives. And you can actually, you can take the spiritual sort of lessoning out of it and look at it purely from an evolutionary standpoint. We are narrativistic creatures. Humans understand the passage of time. Our prefrontal cortex, this latest software upgrade in our mind, has allowed us to look at what happens in the future and the past. But what truly happens at any given point is a series of unconnected events that need to be tied together by the fiction of narrative. You have to make the active cognitive effort of saying these events happen together in a series and therefore this is a story. We understand stories better than we understand facts and events. We are a story building machine.
Yeah.
And so that's why, from a purely evolutionary lens, stories are deeply important to who we are. We operate on stories more than we operate on facts, data, statistics. If you look at the modern world in terms of information, it is obsessed with this, and you can call it the religion of science terminology, right? So like there is logos, pathos, ethos, or however, Christ wanted to say it. There is dharma, karma, like, the Sanatan end of things would like to say it. The religion of science, as has come to be, talks about facts and data.
Osho, for you, you consider as a spiritual mentor. What is the biggest learning from Osho?
So many. And while I mention Osho, shout out Osho, you're not alive, but you can probably hear me. There's also Krishnamurti, there's also Ramdas, there's also Neem Karoli. Like, I feel like, let's put it like this. I can go endlessly about Osho. I can do an hour-long episode just talking about things I've learned from Osho. I'll give you one or maybe two, right? And I'll actually put it in the language of Ramdas, which is much more digestible. Ramdas said, the minute you are born, you are put into somebody training. You're told by the world for the rest of your life that you need to become somebody. Chop, 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 become somebody. And you spend the rest of your life trying to find all these differences in which you are somebody and the world is not that somebody. Because the somebodyness emerges from a difference. And eventually, the truth of the matter is you have to become nobody. And that's a hard switch to make. Now, Osho puts it in a different way. In the first lecture he gives on Ashtavakra Gita, and you know about this, it begins with this simple, and I'm going to start in Hindi and translate it in English. The first sutra, the first aphorism from Ashtavakra's song is, Tum sachmuch drashta ho. Tum sachmuch sirf drashta ho, which means you are truly only the watcher. And he says that there is three phases to being. There is the darshak or the audience, where you observe the world happens and you're the audience of the world. Then the drashya or the performer. And this is where most people are going from being nobodies to becoming somebody. I am the one you should look at. This is the desire for fame, money, for power, for respect, for status. So you go from being an audience to a performer. This is the chasm most people seek to sort of fill in their entire life. And he's like, beyond that is the truth, where you are the drashta or the watcher of yourself and the world. It's very different from being an audience. You're not non-participative.
What's the difference for the first one that you said?
So the first one is the audience.
Exactly.
The second one is the performer. And the third one is a participative observer. right?
Yeah,
And this is the nobody that
Yeah.
Ramdas is talking about on the other side. And he says, he goes on to explain this over an hour and a half. He's like, the way you understand what a participative observer or a drashta or somebody who's the watcher is that the arrow of attention goes outwards as far as it goes inwards. The minute you are attending not just to what is happening, but what is happening to the watcher of what is happening. The minute I observe Rodrigo and also see myself looking at Rodrigo, I have woken up. I have become nobody. And so that is the evolution. That's one of the interesting ideas. The other interesting ideas I was listening to earlier today is Osho's magnum or the most famous lecture series he ever gave, which was from sex to superconsciousness. And look at the amount of balls this old dude had. He's like, he begins this lecture for a 45-minute long on all religions. He's like, religion is the birth of all corruption because it has limited your ability to love by limiting your ability to focus your energy on sex. And he's like, sex is the birthplace of liberation. But religion, which promises you liberation, has become the obstruction to sex, the energy which becomes love, and love, the energy which becomes devotion, and devotion, the energy that eventually takes you past that point, right? Like that leads you to liberation. And he's talking about how sex becomes super conscious. And I can get into that. It's a 10-minute long detour, but that'll explain to you what, like the orgasm is the perfect manifestation of waking up. It's pretty twisted, but it's true.
Tell me more about that.
In the 8 seconds of your orgasm, you are not separate from you. You're not in the duality of existence. You are not hoping it was something else. Yeah. Your mind and body are deeply connected. Yeah. It's the oneness of existence. You don't care what you are in the moment of orgasm. In the moment of orgasm, the doubts, the worries, that's why we are so addicted to sex. The pursuit of sex is a pursuit of those 8 seconds, or women are lucky they can get it for longer, orgasm. Because in that moment, the duality of existence has ceased to be. What you desire is what you are. Your desire, your imagination and your reality has become, it's almost impossible to be orgasming and thinking, I wish this was better. Because the orgasm ceases to exist in that moment. The orgasm is a forceful physical manifestation of waking up. And that's what he's talking about. Or I guess he will talk about when I listen to it further. But that's my understanding of it.
Yeah, I think for me that realization was huge. When there's two people. There's the performer, and there's the observer of the performer.
Yeah.
And but I think it's not a very easy. It's not very easy to do that.
Yeah.
To observe. In your spiritual journey, how did you do that?
Practice. Like you have to. There's many ways to break the door, right? For some people, actually, pain might just break the door. Loss might break the door.
Yeah.
In fact, I found in my most painful, I'm most aware. Part of why we desire pain is because it is the feeling of being alive. The currency of being alive is pain. And we can get into that philosophical tangent at some other point. Let's bring it a little bit more closer to home. Just go do a Vipassana retreat, 10 days in silence, and the door is knocked almost like a bull ran through the door. Like there's just no option after day 2. You can't fight it. Silence reveals all. The truth is heard when there is no one talking. And you're just like, this has always been the case. What have I been doing? And it's so funny. The last one I did was in January. The next 3 months was a completely different zone. And now I know I'm soiled again. I can feel the soiling. I get worried too long. I think and I get lost in my trappings, in my prison, and I'm, right? So I know I need to go again at some point. I need to keep up the practice, like, sit in those. But effectively that you need a ritual.
Yeah.
You need an exercise to get there.
Yeah.
Until it becomes nature. It becomes your instinct itself. And when it becomes your instinct, the process of waking up has begun. The enlightenment, liberation, this mystical, magical idea of true, illumination has begun to happen. That's what I think is really the case.
Yeah. For me, meditation helped me a lot.
Yeah.
But you're right. You need to do it consistently.
Yeah.
And go deep and practice it.
Yeah.
And then you can observe that separation.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what I did. And I think, you mentioned about pain, and you said it's another conversation, but I would like to go there.
Yeah, let's go there. Let's go to pain.
I think like one of my guests shared that people are more driven towards avoiding pain
Sure.
than looking
For pleasure.
For pleasure.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But I think a lot of us, we avoid pain.
Sure.
We avoid pain.
Sure. So let us first critically analyze what your guest says, and with all due respect, it's not that people are driven more by avoiding pain than getting pleasure, but it is that when you compare similar quantities of pain and pleasure, you feel more pain than pleasure. But the point is, it's not like I'm constantly in a state of running away from pain. It is only when there is pain and pleasure, and I can avoid this pain or get this pleasure, I will avoid the pain before I will go to the pleasure. Pain and pleasure in comparison, pain is bigger than pleasure. In comparison, but very often, in most cases, it is not a direct optionality between the two. Do you understand? Now, if you truly understand the mechanics of this world, if you truly understand God's great plan, if you understand the chemistry, the alchemy of our material existence, if you understand what the mechanics of this reality are all about, you will understand that almost anything you want is past a point of pain.
Yeah.
If you make friends with pain, the surest way to transform yourself is to make friends with pain. The question that spiritualists should get asked almost as a litmus test of their spirituality is, how do I make a lot of money? Which is a complete antithesis to spirituality. And if they don't tell you by incurring humongous quantities of pain, then they're not really in sync with the universe. Okay? All great change is like that seed struggling to fight its way out of the soil, like Osho would put it. And it comes from intense pressure and pain.
Yeah.
All pain. Pain is the currency of change. That is the short answer to your question.
That's it.
You change because you are able to make friends with pain.
Yeah.
And the minute you start running away from pain, you have decided by your own secret violation, I am going to remain like this forever.
Yeah.
And here is the thing. The option is never, this is where I disagree with your guest, the option in fact is never between pain and pleasure. It is between a pain you choose and a pain that circumstance chooses for you.
What do you mean?
Either you choose your suffering, or the world will choose it for you. There is no avoiding suffering at all. The relationship of avoiding pain is avoiding it to a point where it's inevitable. And you cannot always choose your pain. Some pains you get to choose, some you let life give to you. Some places you try hard, some places you let go.
Yeah, I think so. For me, I think I had an experience which was very, very powerful and taught me a lot about pain, which was the first time I did a ice bath.
Okay.
I jumped.
Yeah.
It was so painful.
Yeah.
So painful. My brain, the first thing that told me was get out.
Yeah.
Get out.
Right.
After 20 seconds, I got out. Then I decided, no, I want to stay. And I jumped. And then I felt the pain. But then I could stay for longer. And then I started to realize, okay, that's my brain, which is avoiding me from experiencing this. And then I said, I'm going to stay for 5 minutes, and I'm not going to go out.
Yeah.
What happened was I went through the pain, and then what happened after? I felt like bliss.
Yeah.
So I embraced pain so that I could achieve, like bliss. And I think a lot of what's happening in our life is at the end of pain. But I think a lot of us, we avoid pain.
Sure.
We avoid pain.
Yeah.
So my question to you is like, how can we embrace pain to get what we want?
I'm going to break this down, right? And I'm probably going to sound harsh, and forgive me because I am an idiot. The first thing I will say is So I used to do this, by the way, but this is before it was popular. This is actually when I was very socially unsure, right? Taking it back to our first topic of conversation, when I moved to America, and I couldn't get myself to take that number 100 down because like I couldn't get myself to talk to people on the street. Every morning I'd wake up, no matter how cold or hot it was. I'd turn the shower on to the coldest and I'd be like, I'm going to stand under this pain. And it was basically training myself into being like, pain is okay. Right? Basically it is that. Now ice baths have become almost this status activity, this collective ritual, right? In vogue in certain ways, and there is benefits of it being in vogue. Many people get to try it and so on. But effectively what ice baths are performative sadism, right? You're being sadistic to yourself, you're incurring pain in a performance of sorts, right?
Okay.
And what that is teaching you is pain's really not that bad.
Exactly.
Pain is kind of okay. I mean, you know, it really ends when it ends. Like it doesn't stay forever. The trouble with being in pain, and notice this, like when you're ever like, what's a good example? It almost clicked. But like when you're deeply in pain, the trouble is you feel like it'll never end. You feel like this is forever the case.
Yeah.
If you understand it'll end, it becomes much more natural. And so what happens is when you go in and you come out, you're like, oh shit, I'm no longer cold. And you look at it almost with this post-nut clarity, where after you've orgasmed, you're like, what the hell? I got up because I was being afraid of this shit. There's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And fear and pain separate. And so you're like, I'll take the pain because I'm no longer afraid. Right?
Yeah.
And in that moment, what has really occurred is because it ended and your body recognizes pain actually ends, it might feel intense, but it actually ends, you are able to sit through it. If I take this deeply spiritual, this is the really crazy part, is effectively pain is just a sensation.
Yeah.
And cold is just a sensation. And if you truly make peace with the sensations of your body, which is the deepest spiritual maxim of all of them, you can sit in absolute cold like the ascetics of Himalayas do and not feel a thing. There is a reason because anyway. Now coming back to it, the trouble with what you asked me as a question, Rodrigo, is this inherent mercantilist instinct behind pain, which is how can we do such something magic to someone's mind so that they're willing to take pain for what they want? Right? Like you see, I'm already saying I will only take pain for the eventual benefit of it.
Tell me more.
So, the idea that you must accept pain because there is a light at the end of the tunnel is an inherently corrupt idea. Because I will die of impatience for that light at the end of the tunnel. And even when I'm enjoying that pain, or when I'm going through that pain, in my mind, I'm playing over and over what will happen once this pain is over. And so I've refused to live. See, 90% of this is pain. Your bliss of sitting 5 minutes in the ice bath, your bliss was 1 minute.
Yeah.
So if you do the math, technically, 5/6 of it, which is roughly about 92, maybe I'm wrong, like maybe 82%, some percentage of this was effectively you being in pain for the last 1/6 of it to be in pleasure. Which is 18%, 1/6 is roughly like that. Maybe I'm doing math all wrong. Forgive me, 16% maybe. Now, for 16% of this pleasure feeling, you put 84% in pain. This is what life looks like. But if you tell somebody, if you go through the pain now, you will have pleasure later, eventually they'll realize how skewed that math is. You will realize that why am I putting myself through countless hours on the treadmill and under the iron at the gym to look good for 3 minutes? They will realize the corruption of that math. And in some way, what you need to do to make friends with pain is to realize that even if this is the end all be all, it is still pretty good. It is better than nothing. Instead of bargaining with pain and saying, once you are gone, I will finally have pleasure. And that pleasure is so short lasting. The amount of, guys will spend so long trying to court a woman to eventually orgasm in under 2 minutes for an 8-second orgasm. Look at the skewed mathematics of it. You see what I mean? Nature had to invent this deep sense of passion in men to lose all reasoning. So they would just spend 2.5 minutes as they walk into a bedroom. The mathematics of pleasure is skewed. And we must not rely on that. In fact, it's also promoting a very bad relationship with your reality. If you do not accept the up and down for what it is, but in fact its counterpart. Because then when you will have pleasure, you know what? You will always be afraid you will lose it. And then pain will come again. Right? It's gonna happen again. Damn, I hope it doesn't happen. I hope it doesn't happen. You're locked into your prison again. You must learn how to dance with pain.
Yeah.
And that's a very different thing from saying, once the pain is over, pleasure will emerge. That should be a non-promise. Never teach your kids that. Tell them pain is the only reality. Have fun with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that. Yeah. So learn how to dance with pain. Yeah. And don't be just focused on the outcome.
And you know, the most painful moments of your life will teach you more about reality than the most. Like pleasure. Pleasure is like the desert.
Yeah.
But you've got the greens is what's going to keep you alive. You know what I mean? Like the toughest moments of my life, in retrospect, are like, yo, how did I learn all of this in like that short amount of time? Right? And so I don't want to add character to pain more than what it already has. I don't want to say pain is beneficial. I don't want to put a utilitarian stamp onto pain. Pain is the most raw feeling of existence. Pain is the most unfiltered level at which you live. And you must not try to fight it. You must try to love it. You must try to be grateful for it. Because one day there is going to be none.
But why?
Because death. Right? The opposite of pain and pleasure, it's not like pain and pleasure is like on pain and pleasure. It's pain and pleasure and nothing. Pain and pleasure on the same side. The mathematics of spirituality is very different from the mathematics of psychology. Right? On the mathematics of spirituality, not smoking and constantly thinking about not smoking. You know what nofap is?
No.
Nofap is this obsessive idea of not fapping, of not jacking off, right?
Yeah.
And it's a cosmic trend in the internet circles. It's very like, there's a cultish following to this trend. You know what nofap is, right? Nofap is as bad as obsessive fap.
Okay.
In the spiritual sense, you're obsessed with fap. Whether it's no or yes, it doesn't matter. Pain and pleasure is the same thing in the spiritual math of things. Being obsessed with money and being obsessed with and being completely pained with no money is the same problem.
Yeah.
In the spiritual plane of things. Because your life is all about money. It hasn't moved past it.
Yeah.
So pain and pleasure, if you reject pain, you must deeply love pleasure. And then if you expect pleasure, then you must completely disown pain. And you are constantly lost in this battle of bargaining with reality as opposed to dancing with it.
Yeah. And be present.
And being present. That's the surest way to lose presence, is to say beyond this pain is pleasure. The point of stepping into an ice bath is to like the cold. Not for the bliss afterwards. That is injustice to the ice bath.
Yeah.
Have more respect for the ice.
Yeah. But actually, that's what I'm doing now. Now I enjoy the process of. Actually, it's funny. Yeah, I never thought with that, but now I enjoy the process of the ice bath because I learn how to dance with the pain.
Yep.
Which is exactly what you said.
And you know what is very interesting when you go in an ice bath or when you put yourself through immense pain, you can check out, however, right? Like, is instantly the thoughts that come to your head.
Yeah.
There is this beautiful scene from Fight Club, where Brad Pitt grabs Edward Norton's hand and pours acid on his hand here, right? And the only way for that acid to stop affecting is if he puts saliva on it. And he holds his pain. And Edward Norton's like, go to your safe space. Like, he goes into this place in his mind, this cave of comfort. And he's like, don't come back. The pain is what is real, not your imagination. And when you go through pain, notice how your mind tries to go everywhere except the pain. Like, sitting in an ice bath is beautiful because your mind's like, it almost screams, and you did this wrong back in 2012. Because you will accept that before you will accept this pain. You will accept guilt, you will accept regret, you will accept doubt, you will accept everything before you accept the pain in the present moment.
Yeah.
And that conversation is fascinating. If you're truly fond of your mind, if you're truly interested in the psychology of you, damn, the 5 minutes in a water, in like an ice bath, will teach you more about yourself than countless hours in front of a laptop.
Love that.
Yeah, man.
True. It was important to understand what I would like to discuss with you, which is about the art of communication.
Yeah, right.
Because a lot of what impacts the way we communicate comes from the way we handle our emotions,
Sure.
right? Our beliefs, and
Completely.
you've been helping people to better communicate, right? What's the biggest struggle that you see in people coming to you with communication?
Number one is fear. They're very afraid of putting themselves out.
Yeah.
The second one is a lack of clarity in their own systems. They don't know who they are. And that has a gross impact on, like they've not sat down. Like one of the simplest advices I give people is before you're about to go have a fight, just write. One night before, just open a doc and type out, what's really happening. Okay, look at it like this, right? So you and I are about to have a fight. We are roommates and I keep the apartment dirty and you don't like it. And you've been keeping this shit in, bro. You know what I'm talking about. You're keeping this in and one day you just lash out at me, you're like, you! And then because I don't care, I'm like, you're kind of overreacting. And with the least amount of effort, I've completely nullified this anger you've been keeping in for 15 days.
Yeah.
And then the conversation goes nowhere. I'm like, okay, I'll look into it. Go. You go in and you're filled with anger still.
Yeah.
And not only that, you're thinking, this guy, I should have said this and I should have said that and I should have said this. And what has truly happened is you've been carried in an emotional fart from one end of the farting process to the wall without actually delivering any substance. You've not shat, you've just farted.
Yeah.
You've not given me anything to work on. You've not communicated anything at all that's substantial. And that's because you never clarified your feelings to yourself before. And if you truly just write about those feelings one night before, right, what will happen is a lot of the anger will go into the typing process and you will approach this with much more, this sort of meta-awareness. That is interesting. Now, that's the second one. Number one is people are afraid. Number two is people just don't know who they are. Mm-hmm. And number three is people don't have a macro picture of reality. Like we are selectively myopic. And certain psychological states promote a more profound myopia than others. So when we are emotional, the resolution of that emotional feeling is the end of life. If I'm angry, like the guy from the flight yesterday, even after that lady had been moved to another seat, he kept on ranting because the emotion of anger hadn't been resolved. He hadn't won it in front of people. We're just talking, for people who don't know, we're talking about something that happened in my flight yesterday. The guy next to me started fighting with the girl sitting behind him and so on. So people don't have a macro vision of life. And they don't understand that, okay, right now I'm being carried in anger. Right? But that's not how I always feel. This anger is going to go away.
Maybe we can dive on the third one, which there's a lot of lack of self-awareness. Basically, what you're saying, like, what can people do in order to increase their self-awareness? Self-awareness,
you see, you can take on so many interesting routes into this question. You can ask, what is the self? The utilitarian question of what is self-awareness can be answered very simply by saying, notice not what the self is, but notice what the self is in time. If you just notice how you are as time passes, that's all the self-awareness you need, sir.
What do you mean?
You are the same guy who got propelled into this bedroom with this strange woman, and you're the same guy who came and was like, what am I doing? And you start understanding these internal contradictions about yourself. And not just that, you're also the same guy that realizes it's not just, I actually don't want to be liked by Rodrigo because I have to be so different when I'm liked by him. Because you're noticing yourself through time. It's not that one instance of like or dislike. You also are the same guy who realizes, I don't really have to scream at my roommate because all I'm doing in that process is not getting the point across.
Yeah.
Right? When you start noticing yourself through time, when you start watching the happenstance of life, you behave very differently. Because the truth of time reveals who you are to you. When you're obsessed with avoiding pain and acquiring pleasure, all shit breaks loose because you're not here.
Yeah.
The trouble with anger is not that anger hurts other people. Anger rarely hurts other people. Anger truly hurts you. Because first you took 6 days to keep it in yourself. Just welled inside of you, this person is so bad. Then one day you said it and it wasn't even enough. Then you spent the next 6 days thinking, why didn't I say enough? You wasted 13 days. That person did not even pay attention. Anger is a knife you're holding in your own hand. You're hurting yourself. Your desire to change other people. Oh my God. For you to be so obnoxious to think when you aren't willing to change for no one. Nobody's been able to change you. You yourself have no control over yourself, boss. If you did, you'd probably not be smoking as many cigarettes. Or you'd probably be working harder. Or you'd be in the gym more often or whatever. You think you will change somebody? And then you hold on to that. And that becomes this poison that you poison yourself in. And so that's what I'm trying to get at is like, if you just notice yourself through time, you realize I'm not going to change them. Maybe what I want is for them to just hear what I like. And so now I will say this with no force, almost as a confession. Boss, look, people leave, you might leave. And I think the reason why you might leave is this issue that I'm beginning to see emerge. And I want it to not be the case that you leave. But I think this issue will begin to become a case that might lead us separate ways. It's very different from, how dare you do that? How dare you say that to me? It's very, very different.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, and what is the smallest thing that we can do with the largest impact in order to better communicate so that others listen?
Oh yeah, simple. There's a very simple idea. Right. The more you write, not everybody, and I'm saying this with absolute humility, not everybody is blessed with words the way I have been. I have a genetic advantage over people. Let me make no bones of it. I can speak in several variants the same point, explain it in a very intellectual manner. As like, I have a way with words. That's my art form, right? Not everybody does. Not everybody has the time. But if you write, it changes everything. You organize your thoughts when you write. And to be very honest, if you see the number of original pieces I've written that have never gone published or are not even for public consumption, but like private consumption, you'd probably understand why my gift is working. Why I make money for the gift that I have. It's endless writing. My main job in life is to write. Because my main job in life is to give you ideas. And those ideas can only come if they're clarified within. I have almost never taken on a fight in a very long time that I've not written about. And that's my ultimate secret in I'm almost fond of confrontation. I miss confrontation. Life is so boring, there's no confrontation. There's nobody fighting anyway. Nobody has really to fight, right? And so when you take very harsh decisions in life, any harsh decision will attract a certain amount of people disliking you or a certain type of people disliking you. When you do that, sometimes these people are stakeholders in your life and you have to explain to them the truth of your life. I am, for all intents and purposes, going to get married to a woman who was born and raised on the opposite side of the world, who has no connection to India whatsoever except me, right? It's a radical thought in India. A radical thought for my family. I dare someone to argue. It's almost like I'm almost upset that my parents did not have resistance to that because there was nothing to go back and forth on. And so what I mean is, I know I can handle that very awkward, intense, isolated conversation because I'll write about it. And that writing will clarify all thoughts I have in my head. And that's the secret to better communication, is just write.
Yeah, no, I really admire, your thoughts on how you put yourself out there. You are able to be embarrassed, but ultimately you are getting better, you're getting more self-confident, and also you are able to stand out, right? Which is what people want.
Sure.
Like today, there's so much. I mean, like social media is so crowded. You know, even like our career, jobs. You know, we need to stand out. What's your advice for people to stand
Live
out?
as uniquely as you are born. Like your life, you remember the carnival thing I was telling you, there's a map to this carnival earlier?
Yeah.
In that way, your life is as unique as your thumbprint is. Never be convinced otherwise. And why I'm insisting on that is because society, like Freud would put it, is a pressure upon you to sacrifice your uniqueness for integration. The idea is roughly that the superego, which comes from society, that man to exist amongst others will sacrifice a part of their uniqueness, right? And to some degree you must, like, I can't kill you. It's just not allowed, right? But to a great degree, there is a spiritual thumbprint, tongue print, fingerprint to your life. And you must live as uniquely as you can. And there are some limitations, like money is a limitation to live uniquely. We all have to work in corporate, dress up, be automatons, 9 to 5, go home, meet my wife, be pop, right? But hopefully the point is to escape that. Unless you find your uniqueness in that. Search for your uniqueness. Life is too short. If you were 14 yesterday, let's be bloody real. It just happened and now suddenly, you're whatever random age you are. It's too short. Live your most unique self. Don't care about standing out. Don't really, like, the secret to becoming powerful is not caring about being powerful. The secret to winning a room is to not care about, like, what you don't care about is truly what registers. And so the answer to the larger question is don't care about standing out, care about care about truly living in your body, in your mind, in your spirit, and eventually the world finds you. And if you want the world to find you, go onto social media. It's so easy to be found at this point. Yeah. But truly, that's where character is built, is living your life.
Yeah.
Being deeply unique.
And I think for me, is one of the things that I feel sad, and that's what we need more in the world. I think we don't need more successful people. I think we need more people living more in line who they are, feeling more alive. And that's exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Agreed.
Very cool. What is the one thing that you want people to remember from this conversation?
Make friends with pain. It's one of the simplest ways to start unlocking a process. Make friends with pain. Pain's not that bad. It kind of sucks, but it's not that bad. Take yourself less seriously. Enjoy yourself more. Take shit less seriously. Overall, you're too serious about life. It's kind of ruining my vibe, Yeah.
Very cool.
Man.
All right, man.
It's an
It was a
absolute pleasure.
man.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Anything I can do. No problem. I had great fun.